The broadcast began with a tremor in the deep silence between stars. A pulse of raw terror, a signal encoded in a dying frequency, pierced every Terran relay at once. It wasn't a message, they hadn't meant for it to be heard. It was a scream. A live-streamed atrocity unfolding like minutes from the frontier, showing a world burned, its cities cracked open like bones, its sky choked with fire. And in the center of that crimson storm, the truth Earth had refused to believe for decades, 10 million humans, trapped, hunted, executed one by one while an alien audience watched and cheered. The camera was not ours. It hovered above the slaughter, drifting like a mechanical vulture, capturing each flash of agony with cold precision. It streamed the destruction across the hegemony's networks, a spectacle of dominance meant to entertain. But the pirates who rediscovered the link, and rerouted it into Terran space, had hoped to earn a bounty. Instead, they unleashed something far older, far darker, and far more human. The moment the feed reached Earth, the world seemed to stop breathing. Cities froze. Traffic stalled. Every home, office, factory, shipyard, and orbital station turned its eyes toward the projection. The screams were not muted. The faces were not blurred. Children. Workers. Settlers. Scientists. Dreamers. Families crushed under collapsing towers of ash. Human survivors lined up before towering alien warlords. Forced to bow before execution beams that cut through their shadows, the hegemony didn't hide. They broadcast the genocide like a triumph, their generals smiling, their nobles lifting crystal chalices in celebration. They thought humanity was what the galaxy believed, soft, fractured, too new to be dangerous. They thought Earth would mourn quietly, whispering grief into the void. They didn't understand what they had awakened. The broadcast cut to black. Not because the hegemony ended it, because Earth severed the connection. Not in fear, but in decision. In resolve. Something vast and ancient stirred beneath the crust of humanity's long patience. A silence spread across the planet, not the silence of defeat, but the silence of ignition. Across the solar system, orbital yards went from idle to roaring, their engines screaming as humans prepared warships never meant to wake. Weapons that had only been sketched by theorists now received metal, circuits, and purpose. Entire asteroid belts were repurposed in a matter of days. Mars opened its vaults. Luna activated its black sites. Terran fleets assembled so quickly the stars themselves seemed to recoil. The galaxy would later say that humanity changed in that moment. But the truth was simpler. Humanity did not change, the galaxy simply forgot what humans truly were. As Earth watched the last frozen frame of that massacre, a single vow rippled across every nation. Every colony, every drifting outpost. A vow that resonated like a promise carved into steel. There would be no negotiations. No diplomacy. No mercy. What the hegemony did was no longer a crime. It was a declaration, and humanity would answer. The stars shivered, Earth had begun to stand, the fleets rose without fanfare, slipping from Earth's shadow like ghosts forged in firelight. Engines burned sapphire against the void as thousands of hulls aligned in perfect silence. Not a word was spoken between them. The crews did not need speeches. They had seen the broadcast. They had memorized every second. Their rage was steady, cold, and focused, the kind that didn't shout but sharpened itself into something surgical. Humanity did not announce its march toward the stars. It simply moved. Across the solar system, civilian traffic rerouted to make way for battle groups heavier than anything Earth had ever deployed. Ships once meant for exploration were refitted with armor that could shrug off starfire. Transport vessels became mobile fortresses. Mining rigs were turned into kinetic weapons capable of splitting continents. Shipwrights who had spent their lives building peaceful craft now carved out the skeletons of war machines with expressions that never shifted, as if they were chiseling gravestones instead of starships. The first fleet broke orbit and entered slipspace with a thunder that vibrated through the crust of the moon. Moments later, the second followed. Then the third. Rings of blue light spiraled outward as Earth emptied its armories, its mines, its fury. Out in the deep dark, the galaxy watched in uneasy silence. The hegemony's media centers mocked the movement, calling it deathworld theatrics and primitive retaliation. They replayed the original massacre as if daring humanity to act. Arrogance radiated from every broadcast. They believed they were untouchable, shielded behind 1,000 loyal worlds and a military older than human civilization itself, but the veterans who had survived the frontier skirmishes knew better. They whispered through hidden channels, warning their leaders that humanity did not bluff. Humanity endured. Humanity adapted. And when pushed far enough, humanity became a storm. The Terran fleets did not take direct routes. They folded through forgotten wormholes, charted abandoned slip corridors, and passed through unlit voids where even ancient empires feared to travel. At every stop, they found ruins, worlds the hegemony had crushed long ago. Silent cities turned to bone, their histories erased. To the humans, these graveyards were not warnings. They were fuel. Each derelict world tightened their resolve until it burned like a blade drawn across stone. When the first Terran scouts approached the outermost hegemony system, they powered down all transmitters and drifted in on dark engines. They observed without blinking. They counted every patrol ship. They measured every orbital gun. They mapped every civilian population, defensive grid, and military frequency. What they found confirmed humanity's darkest suspicion. The massacre had not been an isolated event. It had been a pattern. One world after another erased because they refused tribute. Species that dared to speak against the hegemony starved or vanished. And the galaxy had stayed silent, too afraid to challenge the Empire's grip. Humanity carried many flaws, but silence in the face of cruelty was not one of them. The scouts transmitted everything home with a single phrase encoded beneath the data, a phrase that traveled faster than any ship could. We strike. Humanity's fury spread through the fleets like oxygen meeting flame. The war had not begun, it had already arrived. The hegemony's outer defenses blinked awake too late. Sensors flared in alarm, scanning the void for the source of disturbances they had not anticipated. Fleets that once moved with supreme confidence now quivered under the unexpected presence of Terran warships. Every patrol, every gun platform, every orbital cannon traced human vectors that seemed to anticipate them before they existed. The first salvo arrived not with the roar of engines, but with the silent precision of inevitability. Drones launched from frigates smaller than cruisers, weaving through shields and point defense grids. Collapsing engines and tearing conduits in a choreography no alien had trained for. Energy pulses reflected, absorbed, redirected, every action a demonstration of human mastery over the void. Dreadnoughts emerged from slip space, massive hulls refracting starlight like molten glass, while interceptors cut arcs of lethal precision between enemy fire. Bombers released volleys timed to the millisecond, ripping through clustered formations and leaving skeletal wreckage in their wake. The hegemony's commanders screamed, but no order could correct the tide. The humans were everywhere and nowhere at once, a storm given flesh and metal. In the heart of the flagship, Commander Kale observed the battlefield. Calm, deliberate, his mind moving faster than any machine, calculating trajectories, predicting maneuvers, anticipating every desperate act of a panicking fleet. Humanity had survived worlds that were death incarnate, machines that slaughtered without conscience, and predators that could consume planets. They had endured and adapted, and now every ounce of that experience surged outward like a blade. Orbital stations once used for mining or research were now active combat platforms, deploying partially built vessels and swarms of drones mid-space. Even ships incomplete by design radiated authority, their purpose clear: survival, precision, and retaliation. The aliens had assumed extinction. They found inevitability. Refugee arc ships, once hiding in the outer belts, drifted behind the fleet, silent witnesses to human orchestration. Civilians, scientists, and settlers watched as their protectors transformed the void into a theater of calculated destruction. Humanity did not strike recklessly. Every volley, every boarding action, Every evasive maneuver reinforced one undeniable truth: to challenge humans was to court annihilation. The alien commanders attempted coordination, desperate to regroup, but every formation collapsed under pressure. The void itself seemed aligned with human intent, bending strategy, reinforcing timing, and ensuring the superiority of the fleets forged on Deathworlds. The broadcast of 10 million deaths, meant to intimidate, had instead forged a reckoning. Every pulse of energy, every synchronized strike, every calculated movement declared one message to the hegemony: humanity had survived the impossible, endured extinction, and returned with one purpose: justice unrelenting, precise, and inevitable. The stars reflected off shields and hulls like witness flames, illuminating the human armada as it carved a path through the alien fleet. The galaxy trembled in the wake of the storm it had forgotten. Humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. The alien fleet fragmented under relentless precision, each vessel struck before it could complete a maneuver. Shields cracking like fragile glass under synchronized volleys. Human dreadnoughts glided through the void with calculated purpose, engines burning sapphire trails that painted the darkness with inevitability. Bombers weaved through energy arcs, releasing torpedoes that found weak points in alien hulls as though guided by thought itself. Interceptors danced between beams and debris, disabling weapons and engines with surgical timing. Every attack, every maneuver, every salvo was a statement. Humanity did not act blindly, they dictated the outcome. From orbital stations, drones leapt into action, welding damaged hulls, recalibrating weapons, and activating emergency systems mid-battle. Partially constructed ships joined the formation, their presence alone adding weight, strategy, and authority to the human armada. Alien commanders, once confident, now struggled to maintain cohesion, their formations unraveling beneath assaults they could neither predict nor counter. Commander Kale stood on the bridge of the flagship, eyes fixed on tactical projections of the battlefield. Crew members moved with quiet precision, each aware not only of their own role but of the greater pattern, the overarching strategy that wove through every ship and every weapon system. Humanity had endured worlds that destroyed entire ecosystems, survived predators that consumed planets, and adapted to machines that made death an art form. Now, all that survival converged into this moment of methodical, unstoppable retribution. Amidst the chaos, the Ark ships carrying civilians and colonists remained untouched, drifting behind the main formation, protected by shields, escort vessels, and layered defensive arrays. Humanity's strength was not just in attack, but in preservation, the ability to shield the vulnerable while dismantling overwhelming threats. Every calculated strike reinforced the same truth: humanity could protect, endure, and dominate simultaneously. The aliens attempted desperate counterattacks, concentrating fire, trying to isolate squadrons, but every movement was anticipated. Human vessels executed maneuvers that seemed to defy physics, turning potential defeats into tactical advantages. The void itself appeared to bend to their intent, guiding trajectories, enhancing timing, enforcing control over every inch of contested space. Destruction reigned on the alien fleet. Hulls ruptured, shields collapsed, engines exploded in silent arcs of debris. The hegemony's confidence, once absolute, crumbled under the disciplined, unrelenting assault. Every blast was precise. Every strike enforced inevitability. Humanity had returned not as legend or shadow, but as a force honed by survival, sharpened by adversity, and perfected by necessity. Above the chaos, distant stars reflected on human shields and hulls, illuminating the fleet like a living constellation of defiance. Alien fleets scattered, panic overtaking arrogance, realizing too late that they faced not an enemy to negotiate with, but a storm forged from the endurance of countless worlds, the wisdom of survival, and the unbreakable will of humanity. Every pulse of energy, every movement, every tactical decision reinforced one immutable truth: the galaxy had forgotten humanity. But humanity had not forgotten the galaxy. The void waited in silence, trembling beneath the inevitability of what had returned. The human fleet pressed forward with relentless coordination, each ship a node in a network of precision and power. Dreadnoughts tore through alien formations, their weapons firing in perfect synchronization. While smaller frigates and interceptors flanked, distracted, and dismantled defenses with lethal elegance. Torpedo volleys struck in waves, each one calculated to exploit weaknesses already anticipated. Every explosion, every rupture of hull and shield, was measured, intentional, unavoidable. Orbital stations released swarms of drones, their mechanical arms repairing damaged hulls mid-battle, recalibrating weapon arrays, and deploying kinetic projectiles into gaps in enemy formations. Incomplete ships, activated prematurely, joined the fray, their energy cores glowing bright against the dark void, asserting human presence and engineering mastery. Alien commanders attempted to coordinate their fleets, issuing desperate commands, but the humans anticipated every tactic, every maneuver, and every countermeasure before it could be executed. The ARC ships carrying civilians moved with the fleet, protected by layered defenses and strategic positioning. The humans ensured that those who could not fight were safeguarded, their survival intertwined with the fleet's unstoppable advance. The galaxy had assumed humanity would strike recklessly, but this was not chaos, it was precision. Every movement reinforced dominance and intention. Commander Kale monitored the battlefield, calculating outcomes, predicting alien maneuvers, and guiding vessels with an instinct that blended human intuition and technological foresight. The fleet responded as one, a single organism made of thousands of ships, each aware of its role, each executing commands with flawless timing. The void itself seemed to bend to their will, energy arcs arcing and refracting in response to the fleet's presence, turning destruction into an orchestrated display of mastery. Alien ships faltered under the calculated assault. Shields collapsed, engines failed, and the remnants of formations scattered in disarray. Humanity did not merely fight, they enforced inevitability. The hegemony's arrogance, its belief in invincibility, crumbled under the disciplined, unyielding advance of a species that had survived death itself and emerged not weakened, but perfected. Every pulse of energy, every tactical decision, every maneuver underscored one truth: to challenge humanity was to accept annihilation. The galaxy watched as humans, once thought extinct or diminished, reasserted their place not through fear alone, but through unmatched skill, intelligence, and moral resolve. The stars reflected off shields and hulls, illuminating the fleet as a living constellation of defiance. Humanity had returned, not as shadows of legend, but as a force that could not be resisted. The cosmos waited, trembling beneath their inevitable approach. The final engagement unfolded like the turning of a celestial storm. Humanity's fleets advanced with unerring precision. Engines blazing trails of blue and gold, weapons primed to perfection. Dreadnoughts carved paths through alien lines, their hulls reflecting distant stars like molten metal, while frigates and interceptors weaved through volleys of enemy fire, dismantling formations with choreographed grace. Every strike, every salvo, every maneuver carried the weight of centuries of survival, of worlds endured and battles won, of a species forged in adversity. Orbital platforms, once silent and inert, hummed with renewed purpose. Drones swarmed into action, repairing vessels mid-flight, activating weapon systems, and deploying partially constructed ships into the fray. Even ships that were unfinished radiated authority, their energy cores flaring as if the void itself acknowledged their intent. Alien commanders, desperate and confused, tried to coordinate attacks, but every move was anticipated, every plan countered before it could take form. Humanity's protective arms stretched across the ARC ships carrying civilians, ensuring their safety while orchestrating destruction with methodical precision. The battle was not chaos, it was the execution of inevitability. Each human vessel acted independently and collectively, a single organism of steel, fire, and intellect. The void itself seemed to respond to their will, amplifying every movement, reinforcing every strike, guiding the outcome towards certainty. Alien fleets shattered under the relentless assault. Shields failed, engines ruptured, weapons overloaded, and formations dissolved into debris. The arrogance of the hegemony, once absolute, crumbled before an unstoppable force that demanded acknowledgement. Humanity had returned not as whispers or myths, but as a living reckoning, a force tempered by the harshest trials, refined by endurance, and sharpened by unbreakable resolve. Even in the aftermath, as explosions faded into the darkness, the fleet did not pause. Repairs commenced, recalibrations completed, drones redistributed, and new vessels activated from orbital yards. Every action was deliberate, every movement a testament to human mastery. The galaxy had assumed humans were gone, weakened, or irrelevant. They had been wrong. Humanity was alive, and nothing could halt their march. Stars reflected across shields and hulls, painting the human armada as a constellation of defiance and inevitability. Alien survivors fled, abandoning hopes of dominance, recognizing in the humans a force that transcended fear and prediction. Each vessel, each crew, each command declared the same truth: survival had become supremacy, and endurance had become authority. The void trembled under their presence. The galaxy would remember.